Okay. Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for coming to our community event. What we're going to be looking at today is in the district at Deerfield to explain what the implementation plan is. Just a little background, my name is Robert Buscemi. I'm the Special Projects Director for the City of Milton. When I started, I was kind of with the city from its earliest days. I started as the city architect for a long time, and we designed all these buildings. And hopefully, none of you have ever seen the inside of this courtroom till today. Because that would just mean that we're all good model citizens and we're good. But Milton has certainly grown over the years, and doing architecture for the city of Milton's been an honor of mine, because I think it's really made Milton Milton. It's a very important thing. And then I was community development director for several years, and then this project came up and they said, Bob, would you take on this project and transfer over to just concentrating on this project? That's how important the city thinks of this project. They really feel that it's a very critical project for the city in the city's development. So it just shows you the level of importance that the city's placing on this. So it's going to be a kind of a fun project. I will say, unlike any other project, this one will be very, very, very community oriented and community based for input and feedback. That's one of our largest concentrations with this project, is all community. We have done a lot of work in rural Milton. We've done large lot zoning and really created beautiful developments and beautiful farms and beautiful architecture throughout the city. And then we developed Crabapple. It took a lot of years. And Crabapple's really taken off, and I'd say it's pretty much all spoken for. I mean, everybody's coming in with plans, and not everything is built yet, but for the most part, Crabapple's really kind of getting completed. And now we're here tonight, and today, and this afternoon, for the Deerfield. And I think that's really a large land area, large land mass for the city. The city really just has two commercial nodes, which is the Crabapple area. There's a little one up in Birmingham Corners, and then Deerfield, which is the largest. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the project, I'd just like to call out a few people. We have Councilmember Kramer, Phil Kramer, who's here. We have Councilmember Jan Jacobus, who's here. We have Scott with PREB. Appreciate it, Scott. I have Judy Birds in the back. She's the Planning Commission Chair, and a great asset to our group of folks working on this. Okay, so what's the reason for an implementation plan in Deerfield? I mean, what's the difference between a master plan and an implementation plan? Implementation plan is different than an overall master plan. An overall master plan is like we start from scratch. We say, okay, what are we looking at? Do we want to change, densities? Do we want to change uses? Do we want to change different facets? We're really not doing that here in an implementation plan. It's kind of important for everybody to know that the underlying zoning for the form-based code is pretty much going to stay intact. I mean, there might be some little tweaks here and there, but densities will most likely stay the same. If there's any changes, it wouldn't really change so much the zoning. It would be more of an infill redevelopment program that would have to then be developed and then go in front of council, and council would have to review it as if it's an infill redevelopment. So what we have here in Deerfield is a lot of empty, ailing kind of spaces. We have shopping centers that are not doing so well. I would say almost all our corporate office space is vacant. It's really, or I mean, we're trying to fill it, but for the most part, now most people drive around and don't really see those office buildings, and if they do, they still look beautiful. People maintain them because they own them, like, say, the Verizon Center. Verizon does very well maintaining its land. And there's other office buildings around, but they're all vacant. And how long can these buildings stay vacant before owners just start throwing them away? We have the Fry's Center, and the Fry's family shut it down. They shut down all their stores across the country, and including the one that we have here on Highway 9. And as you can see, it's vacant, and it just sits there. And you know, over time, if these things just sit there and they're vacant, they start to look blighted, and they're not cared for as much. I will say we have a pretty robust council, and they're on the phone with me almost every day saying, Fry's better cut their lawn, Fry's better keep it looking good. And so they do a pretty yeoman job making sure that Milton and this district always looks beautiful. But the truth is that they're out of town, they're in California, there's people that have these office buildings, they're in Miami, they're all over the United States, and they're not here. And you know, it's a challenge trying to keep that looking good and looking thriving and having a nice employment base that's going to support the local retail establishments and stores. So I think we really need to look at all of this, right? Because we have a lot, and we're going to show you on the map. Everything in red here, this is the district, everything is in the outline district. Everything in red is up for play. These are all developments that are sitting here, and potentially people are coming in saying we'd like to develop them. Now, we're kind of very fortunate in the city of Milton. We have a lot of interest from developers who want to come in and develop within the city. Milton's a special place. We have made Milton Milton. I don't think Milton's become Milton just on its own. I think it's been by design. I mean, if you talk to the council, they have worked extremely hard making Milton Milton and keeping Milton Milton. So we're #1 in Leisure and Travel magazine. We just got on our survey, our communications director will talk about that, but we got a #1 rating throughout the whole country, which was phenomenal, and he'll go through that with you. I'm just saying that Milton's really special. I mean, we're really a great place. We're one of the richest cities in the state of Georgia. Our median income is like $165,000, which is extremely high throughout the state. That's probably the highest. So we're really doing very well. And everybody's real estate's doing very well, I think. Things are selling really well. So Milton's Milton. But now we have this district, and we have a lot of things that we need to really look at. So the difference between a planning, master plan, and a planning implementation is we already have these developers coming in, and the council looked at me and said, gee, Bob, instead of bringing them all in individually and then we have to review each one individually, wouldn't it be better if we brought them all in at once, showed the community what everything is going to look like, kind of vet it out, see what this thing is going to look like graphically and visually, right, in 3 dimensions, and architecturally. And then, once we get that approved with the community, then we can go ahead and talk to each one of these landowners individually and have them go in front of council and make their application. So it seems to make sense, right? I mean, instead of doing them individually and then the community only sees it one by one. So what we're going to do is we hired and engaged the firm of Cooper Carey Architects, and Allison's going to get up and speak, and I'll introduce the whole team in 20 seconds. But what they're going to do is they're going to look at everything and start to show it to the community in 3D, with the architecture, with the roads, how things are going to look. So I think that's really going to be a good aid for the community to see. So I just want to do some other intros. We have Tracy Wiles, who does our land development. She's our land development manager and does all our LDPs and land acquisitions. We have Robert Del Ross, who's our public works. He's not GDOT, by the way. He's a city employee, right? See, that's just to make sure, because he's going to talk to you about Highway 9. I know a lot of people probably wondering about Highway 9 and what we're doing with Highway 9. And that's a big facet. It is a big portion of the corridor, right? It runs up the whole corridor, all the way from Alpharetta to Forsyth. So I think that's a huge impact, and everybody's looking for an impact there too. And we have a lot of different things that that the city wants to do and embellish, and he'll go through that. And then we have Greg, who's our communications director. So he's going to be talking to you about communications and how robust everything will be. And then we have Allison Bickers, who's from Cooper Carey. We have some more staff out in the back. I have Jackie here and Raymond. Everybody's in the back helping. So just so you know who's who. And at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, I want you all feel free to get up and talk to any of the staff and ask questions and kind of get engaged. If you want to talk to the council members, they're here too, so you can talk to them directly too. All right, so this area, we've had a lot of prior studies. You probably have seen, we've had trail master plans and all these different kinds of studies that are out here. We even made this area into the urban growth boundary, so we did a whole urban growth boundary to kind of let the public know that we're going to develop this area and that it's not really going to expand beyond where it is. And that was the purpose of the urban growth boundary, that it's not going to go through creep and keep expanding and growing, that we only want the development to occur within this area for our commercial corridor, and the rest of it will not have any expansion of sewer or any density or any land use change at all. So that we have an urban growth boundary to kind of guarantee that growth will not expand. Okay, and then we have kind of a concept that I want people to know, that in the past, I think Highway 9 was viewed as more of a pass-through in this district. It's more of a pass-through, right? People would drive, kind of get from Alpharetta to Forsyth. Everybody's just using it as a pass-through. And we're rethinking that. We're not really, one second.
Can you just hold the mic up close to your mouth?
I'm sorry, is that better? Okay. Okay. So what we're doing is we're not looking at Highway 9 no longer as a pass-through. We're looking at Highway 9 now as a destination. And that changes things, because when something becomes a destination, sort of everything changes in design. And that was one of the big factors that we went to GDOT with when the GDOT road got stalled. We went to them and said, listen, the city of Milton really views the Highway 9 corridor now as a destination. And that's really an important element, because that does a lot of things like lowering speed limits, enhancing the aesthetics, making people really utilize this in a different facet than they would if it was just a kind of a pass-through GDOT road with high-speed roads and high-speed turn lanes and that kind of thing. GDOT thinks of things a little differently than we do. When it becomes a destination, I think that they're now looking at it and saying, okay, if you're really going to make a destination, we're open to some suggestions on what we're going to do. And connectivity with pedestrians, I think, is another major facet that we're looking at. Because I think people look at this area and it's not very walkable at this point. It's kind of difficult to walk around, bicycle ride, spend a day just kind of relaxing through the corridor and through the district. So we're looking to change all that. We're looking to really make it much more pedestrian friendly. And between all these developments, we're going to have nice connections, and that's what we're going to hopefully prompt the community to look at, review, and encourage us to do, because we're really looking to do that, to really make everything walkable, and to spend your day getting on a bicycle and going to the Greenway or going to a shopping center by PTV and just driving your PTV to a shopping center and relaxing there for the day, and then getting back in your golf cart, so to speak, and drive back to your residence. So it's just kind of a different philosophy of how this district's going to start to function versus how it functions now. So it's a different orientation, a different emphasis. We're also looking at the potential, and I'm just prompting the community here a little bit to get your feedback. we ask you to write things on the board, but we're also looking for to consider sub-districts within the district. So you don't always have to, it's a large land area, and one rule down here might not apply to where we are up here at Cookie Creek. I mean, the same rules may not apply, right? Because we're in different areas of the district. So even in Crabapple, we did the Crabapple area, and then we went and did a sub-district called Mayfield District, which is a sub-district within the Crabapple District. So it's a slightly different set of rules, different philosophy. So we could do the same thing here. We can have sub-districts along the main district. So that's another consideration. And let's... Okay, and then the architecture is probably one of the most important things when we start to develop the district out. So I want you to kind of think about the architecture, because architecture really makes a community. When you do a lot of travel, you travel to places where the architecture is beautiful, right? I mean, you want to go to see cities, you go to Europe, you want to see the different places. A lot of it's got to do with the architecture, how things look. You go to like places, you want to go to small towns in Virginia for a weekend or something, or you want to go to the Highlands. I mean, people go up there, it's really just a small little district that you walk around, kind of spend the day enjoying it. If the architecture didn't look good and it wasn't kind of enjoyable and walkable, chances are you wouldn't go there. Because there's a lot of cities in North Carolina that I go through and people, they're all empty. And then other ones are booming. Why? Because the architecture really is the draw. So the architecture and how that architecture relates to open space and green space. And I think the council's made a strong point in telling staff that they really want, say, the Highway 9 corridor, for instance, to really look aesthetically pleasing. Does it have landscaping? Does it have areas where you have little pocket parks and linear parks? And Tracy will go through all of this and give you kind of a little bit of the vision. But I think it's an important factor that council's really been, emphasizing to staff, saying we don't want it to just look blighted. We want it to look really nice and friendly, and we want people to want to come here sort of as a destination, right? And Greg's going to talk a little bit about how we came up with the word destination Deerfield, because I think it's really going to be promoted as a destination now. And then we'll talk a little bit about the schedule at the end. I'll have Allison talk about our schedule and just lay out next steps and how the schedule looks, so everybody kind of knows, because we have a pretty robust community outreach. So there's some meetings we're scheduling, like one on a Tuesday, one on a Wednesday, because it's so critical. So each meeting when you come, this is just the intro, but from here on, we will have a topic of importance. So the next meeting, say, might just be on architecture. Then the meeting after that will just be on transportation. And the meeting after that will be on public events, and how do we get these areas to thrive through public input and events. So we have just different kind of topics that we're going to be pushing. So not every community meeting will be the same. They'll all be very specific in how we lay them out. So I don't want you to miss any, I guess I'm saying, right? I can encourage everybody to keep coming. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Robert Del Ross, and he'll be talking about the GDOT.
Thanks, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Del Ross. I'm an engineer with the City of Milton Public Works Department, and I was asked to speak a little bit about the Georgia DOT plan to widen State Route 9. Those of you have probably heard about what's going on with that. You may have read that a former GDOT right-of-way acquisition specialist was involved in a pretty elaborate scheme involving fraud and falsification of documents. This led the state to incorrectly believe that land had actually been acquired in preparation for them to start the project. They had actually hired the contractor, and some of that work had begun. No right-of-way was actually purchased by the state, and since that came to light, the state has luckily obtained right-of-way entry to re-enter those parcels. on 23 of the 31 parcels that they impacted. Basically, they're taking the position that they trespassed to start the work, and they're not willing to trespass again to clean it up. They're hoping that those property owners will work with them to kind of stabilize and clean up what they had disturbed. So without legal right of entry to re-enter the property, it would be illegal for GDOT's contractor to enter to clean up even what they had previously disturbed. Many of the cones, barrels, signs, the traffic control elements, those have been removed. It no longer looks as much like a construction site as it did. More cleanup is on the way. We are expecting GDOT to continue to work over the next 30 to 60 days to clean up the corridor to the best of their ability. Milton is also prepared to potentially assist with cleanup on particular parcels that are not willing to give the state permission to do that. Unfortunately, the bad news is that this project is going to be delayed because of what I just described. However, that development opens the door for this process, for the community to be more engaged, to better ensure that the road, when it's finished, will reflect more of the community's desires and needs. Milton has made several requests to the state, which would be minor changes to their design and their plans with minor schedule impacts. GDOT recently, we had a meeting over at City Hall. They reacted pretty positively to many of our requests, but they have not yet formally responded. With respect to the schedule, the state is expecting the right-of-way acquisition effort to take at least 3 years from the point that they're able to start. And they're not going to be able to start that until we've finished potentially redesigning what we would like to change. Some of those requests along the corridor, those changes that we've asked for a speed limit reduction. We've asked for a lane width reduction. We've asked for a second look at some traffic signal recommendations due to the age of the previous traffic analysis that was done during COVID. We've asked for an additional public meeting. We've asked for reduced impacts, to establish landscaping in the existing subdivisions along the corridor, as well as coordination that Bob is leading with adjacent landowners to help the corridor by incorporating sidewalks into some site developments that could improve the pedestrian experience while limiting overall project impact and reducing the cost to the state. So at this point, Georgia DOT has always been a very strong partner with the city, and we look forward to our combined efforts to make the project better for you, the community, while enhancing everyone's ability to arrive at their destination in a safe and efficient manner. I'm going to stick around after this if any of you have questions about the corridor from a transportation perspective or from the state DOT project. But at this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Tracy Wilds. She's our land development manager. She's going to talk a little bit more about the vision as far as the look of the corridor moving forward.
Sir, before you sit down,
Sure.
why wasn't one of those requests to GDOT that they reduce the width of those sidewalks from 8 feet and 10 feet down to 5 feet?
So one of the requests was to reduce impacts to establish landscaping in the existing subdivisions along the corridor, and that's where those reduced sidewalks come into play.
But did you request those reduced sidewalks?
We requested reduced impacts to establish landscaping in the existing subdivisions along the corridor that includes reducing sidewalks, yes. We're not willing, there are desires from the community to be able to walk along the corridor. There are also desires from the community to use other vehicles along the corridor, including PTVs, and a sidewalk has to be a specific width in order for the state DOT to allow those vehicles.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Ike Yancey. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association at Regency at Windmill Square. And I'm the head, or the leader, of the coalition against GDOT Habit. And one of the major contributors to the loss of all the landscaping and so forth up and down Highway 9, especially in our subdivisions, is 8-foot and 10-foot wide sidewalks. A very good way to eliminate that is to reduce them down to 5 feet.
I agree. To be respectful for everyone's time, I'll be able to happily talk to you about that once the presentation's finished. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy Wilds at this point so we can get through our presentation. We can move on to Q&A later.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob. Good afternoon, everyone. What Rob just described with GDOT kind of provides opportunity, right? When you think about Milton, Milton is a special place, like Bob said, and Milton is intentional. When you think about Crabapple, you think about where City Hall is located. You think about the green in front of City Hall, where the amphitheater and the stage is at. You think about Birmingham Crossroads, up in our rural area, where we have along every corridor, every thoroughfare that we have in Milton, we have a 60-foot rural view shed. So one thing we're extremely proud of is that green look, trees, landscape, that green space. And when you think about Deerfield, what do you think about right now? Avoiding it, right? Because of construction and the chaos. And that's what this whole project, this whole vision is allowing us to do. Provide an opportunity here in Deerfield to kind of make an identity like Crabapple, like Birmingham Crossroads. And so we're excited about the opportunity to come in and work with the developers as they start studying this area. We could have opportunities for linear parks. Linear parks would allow people to be on the corridor and view it, but outside of it, on private property where you've got walkability, you've got crosswalks, you have an opportunity to walk in and shop and connectivity. When these developments come in with the sidewalks, we want to be very intentional about crosswalks, where are pedestrians crossing, and making sure that that identity of the crosswalk is very identified along the Highway 9 corridor. And if there's existing trees, we want as minimal disturbance as possible, right? We want to keep it what we have. This opportunity for us to sort of take a pause and look at it would provide us some allowance for staff and developers to come in and really look at what that green landscape is going to look like. Rob mentioned that there'll be some requests for lanes to become narrower on the Deerfield. If we can get wider medians, that means we can put sod, we can put landscape, and that's going to be intentional. We're going to work with GDOT, and we have to comply within some of their landscape standards, but where we can, we want shade trees. Maybe some of those shade trees are outside of the right-of-way on private property. But to have a green median, shrubs, maybe ground cover, it's going to change the experience right now as you drive through Deerfield. Right now, as you drive through Deerfield, it's peppered along with Alpharetta and with Milton, and it's hard to identify what parts of Milton you are in and what not. With landscape, we're able to do that. Right now, I think if you drive through rural Milton, you're able to identify, I'm in a different place. I'm somewhere that is a little bit different. It's memorable. And that's the intention here along Deerfield. So it's going to be very intentional. Bob talked about making Deerfield a destination. That's going to be very intentional from staff, from developers, and this opportunity here to sort of take a pause and look at that landscape. I too will be here after the meeting. I'm eager to hear your suggestions and your ideas, and I'm going to turn it now over to Greg, our communications director.
Thank you very much. I'm Greg, the communications director. I'm the messenger, I guess. That's part of my role. Before I actually get into it, I have a quick question. Raise a hand, show of hands. How many people have been here and lived in West Milton since 2016, since our founding? Okay. So, and how many people in the last 10 years? Okay, so it seems like we get most of the people. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and just for my way of background, I'm a recovering journalist. I came into this job 2 months before COVID, had no idea what I was doing, and apparently we do a lot more here than other places. Milton is different in terms of whether you're here for a while, compared to other cities. So Bob mentioned there's something called, just a background, National and Community Survey, which is basically people in between 350 to 400 cities are asked the same exact questions about their government. So basically quality of life, how do you confidence in the city government, how people are informed. In pretty much every single one of these measures, including the ones that are most important, Milton was in either like 97th, 98th, 99th percentile in terms of treating people fairly, treating residents with respect, keeping people informed, and just kind of going above and beyond, because that's what we're all about. We also were number one, what Bob mentioned, in terms of service. To the residents of all these places said that we had provided the best service as city employees to our our people. That being said, we are not perfect. We are not, there's always more we can do, and that's part of my challenge, because nowadays, in terms of we want to get the information about what's happening here. People get their information. What used to be like 25 years ago, you read your newspaper, turn on the TV, ask your neighbor. Now it's like 20 different social media, 20 different, like all these different ways of people getting. So we're trying to at least, you know, it's not scattershot, but try to as many ways that you all can figure out what's happening in this project, and that's kind of part of my job to help with that. We have a miltonga.gov/Deerfield, which is where all this will house. We'll have videos from Oksana. We'll have any documents, any renderings once they come out, all that stuff in kind of one place. We have text notifications. Some people prefer to get a text about things. We have a specific one specific to this project. We have emails. We have umpteen social media. That being said, you know, there's a lot we're trying to do, and we just want people to just know that you're part of this, because when I talk about Milton being different, we've won national awards in terms of public engagement. Engagement means that you feel informed, you feel that you're part of the process, and that you're part of the solution. So that's one of the things. For even right now, we have something on our website. You can submit a form, you can give your thoughts. I will say that this project's a little different. Say if we want to say, someone says, I want to move the Montreal Canadiens to the Verizon Center. You can say that, it's not going to happen. I want a Trader Joe's in this corner. I'm like, great. There's certain things we're going to do, and actually Scott, there's a park that's being formed, and that's going to be a separate track. I'm not sure people but you know, it's in the heart of this area. There's certain things that Rob and stuff like that we can kind of help influence, and then there's people who are going to be spending lots of money to develop these areas. They're going to want to say what's in there too. So we have to work with them, and we have to basically be your voice as much as we can. So that's what we're all about, and that's our philosophy. And we want you to be part of that. And in terms of how that's going to be, this is going to be through events like this. This is kind of a more informal, and Allison will lead you through some exercises today. But really, we have public meetings. There'll be some meetings like this, like Bob mentioned. There's any city council, planning commission. Those meetings are open to the public as well. And then generally, our commitment too is that there's a lot that's going to happen between now and the end of the year. But beyond that, we're also committed to continuing to engage and continue to tell you at least what's happening. And there's only certain things that we can control and that everyone can control, but we want you to be part of the process, and that this is your community, like we are your government. So we're here to serve you and to advocate for you as best we can, knowing that we are not all powerful. It will be magic wand, we can do a lot of things, but we're trying. So that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Allison. She's part of our project team from Cooper Carey, so she's going to kind of walk you through some extra things. And unfortunately, I may have to run out because I have 4 children and they want to be fed for some reason and other things like that, but you will see me around the city, and you'll see Oksana too. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. As Bob said, I'm Allison Bickers, and I'm with Cooper Carey. I'm an urban designer, and if you didn't already know, some of my colleagues at Cooper Carey designed this building that you're in and your city hall as well. So we are familiar with all the things that make Milton unique. And what we are starting to really think about is how is Deerfield uniquely Milton and also uniquely Deerfield? Because Deerfield and Crabapple are in the same city, but how are they alike and how are they different? So we're thinking big picture, and Cooper Carey is leading a team that includes architects, landscape architects, economic development experts, implementation experts that help us determine, how we actually create a plan that is implementable, a vision for Milton that's implementable, and not just a pretty document that sits on a shelf. And so one of the biggest charges that we have been given is to really to listen first, so to listen to you, the community, visualize what we hear in renderings and visualizations, and then create an urban design manual that enables the city council, the planning board, the design review board to make decisions about future development that reflects the community vision for where Deerfield is going in 30 years. So this is a vision that is not just about 5 years down the road, but it's also about where is Deerfield
in 30 years, 40 years, and beyond. Because as we all know, when you have a highway like Highway 9 running through it that is a GDOT controlled road, changes to such roads don't happen in 5 years, as much as we would like for it to, right? So we want to really guide city investment, private investment, and partnerships, and all these investments that are made over the long haul. And I think one of the things that you've heard is that Milton is unique in its commitment to quality architecture and quality landscape architecture. So that is really guiding us, and we're getting a lot of input on that. We are also asking big questions. And the reason you hear us having a large team, questions like, how do you activate these large parcel office parks? How do you activate those so that they're not just sitting empty and like Verizon, gated off? I mean, it's well maintained, but there's a gate there. Is that what you want the vision for your community to be? And we also know, if you haven't heard, the office market is quite difficult right now. And so we really have to think creatively about other activating forces that can help bring people to those sites, but also are places for people who already live in Deerfield and Milton to be able to work. So is it educational uses? Is it other science and technology, other economic driving forces that we can use to put people working in those buildings and being there again every day? The other thing is thinking about how, one thing that we've heard so far, and we are just beginning the process. And this process, you don't see any proposals up on these boards yet. That's because we're doing a lot of listening. And as Bob and I have talked about a lot, the process is as important or more important than the results. Because what it is most important is that this is your plan. This is not Cooper Carey coming in and telling you what your plan is. This is your plan as the citizens of Milton and the residents of Deerfield. So one thing that we've heard so far is that there is a real desire to be able to navigate through Deerfield and within Deerfield without having to get in your car, and making it more walkable. Bikeable, we've heard a lot about bikes. And so how do we start to layer in a transportation network that is not solely about cars and having to get in your vehicle if you live a half a mile from Target? Is there another way to get there that is convenient if you're just going? No, none of us go to Target and just get one bag full of stuff. We all know that. But if you were to go for a quick trip to Target or CVS, would there be another way to get there? So that's one of the things we're going to be thinking about. We've also heard that this wants to be, we've heard a lot about how residents of Deerfield don't feel like they are a part of Milton because Deerfield doesn't look like Crabapple. So we want to ask that question and start to think about, what does it mean to be uniquely Milton, and that it's clear when you pass from the city of Alpharetta or Forsyth County that you are now in Milton without having to have the sign, "Welcome to the city of Milton." Are there other identifiers that you know you are in Milton, but it's also uniquely Deerfield? Because Deerfield does have office parks, and it does have Target and Aldi and other things that are really important to people's everyday lives. And so how do we do that? So that's what we're going to start asking. So a couple of quick things is, we talked about the process. And so one of the things, and again, this is an introductory meeting. In about 3 weeks, we're going to have a highly interactive meeting that's less of us talking and more listening over an array of topics. And then it will be over 2 days. But that falls into, really this process falls into 3 phases. So phase 1, we're working a lot on thinking about the Highway 9 redesign. Now, Cooper Carey is not redesigning Highway 9, but we have, because of the change in the GDOT process that Rob Del Ross spoke about, we do have an opportunity to influence, so it's It's an integral part of this process as well. So it's moving parallel, as you see here. So you have the Deerfield implementation plan and the GDOT Highway 9 redesign process. At the end of the day, you don't want to feel like that's happening in two different vacuums. It wants to feel like it's one integrated process, and that's our goal. The other thing that we're working on is we're meeting with different property owners in Deerfield to understand what visions they have for their properties, and then begin to hear what they think is possible and what they dream of doing on their property. We're also working with different stakeholder groups. We're going to be working with them, and there'll be more meetings to come with that. And then we're also listening to the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. It's a lot of listening. At the end of that listening, towards the end of October, we'll come up with a preliminary concept plan. And in that concept plan, it's very big ideas, because this is a big study area. And so we're going to start to test some ideas, and that will also involve public presentations. So it's not going to be done in a back room and you don't know about it until it's done. So that's going to be vetted. Then we move really and we'll do that. And then in November, we'll really start to, with public input, finalize that concept plan. And that really transitions into visualizing the plan in 3D so that we can write the urban design manual again that reflects community input and the vision for where Deerfield is going in 30 years. With the goal, all of this culminates with the goal of being able to, that the city council feels comfortable lifting the development moratorium, because as Bob said, there's a lot of interest to redevelop some really key sites in the city of Deerfield. And if we can lift the moratorium and everyone is comfortable with how that will look and feel, that's one step closer to seeing change happen in Deerfield. As I said, this is a vision for 30 years, but this also sets the tone for what private investment happens in the near term. And then at the end of the year, we'll move into phase 3, which is really where we're doing the nuts and bolts, any code revisions that need to happen, the final implementation plan. It's sort of the less visual parts, right? It's taking what we visualize, what everybody's bought into, and then making that, codifying that into how the city operates, if that makes sense. Okay, so as I said, we have a lot of boards up here. What we would love to do is take this opportunity. As I said, we will have a meeting in about 3 weeks, which is going to involve a lot of public interaction. This one is really just to ask a couple of questions, which is, what are 3 things you'd love to see or do in Deerfield? And this is dreaming. We're not thinking, this is, what do you dream about being able to do here in 5 years, in 2 years, with your grandchildren? Because what we also know is that this is a vision for generations to come. All right, and then what is your favorite thing that you like about Deerfield? What is it about Deerfield that really adds great things to your life? There's a lot of convenience to Deerfield. You can go to the grocery store. There is big box retail here, which doesn't exist in the same way in other parts of Milton. So we want to hear what you love, because we don't want to change what works, right? And then we're all going to be here to answer questions. I have a bunch of pens and Post-it notes, and so I'd love to just have you come and write up comments answering these questions, and we have more room if we need it. The other part is, if you have something that you want to write down that applies to any of these other boards, feel free to get a Post-it note, write it down, stick it on those boards as well. I would also say that we're all going to be around, except for Greg, who has to make sure his children stay alive, to answer questions and just talk. So please, feel free, come up and be comfortable and have conversations with us. Okay?